Welcome back to the channel. Hopefully you saw my A7III versus A7IV video. So I've had the A7IV for a little while now, and this is going to be the best settings for the A7IV for photography. We'll dive right into the menu system. I'll tell you which settings that you need to change so that your camera is going to be ready to use. I'll also give you my custom settings. Hopefully you'll find it useful. Just keep this intro short because I'm sure you're just after the information. So we'll head over to my desk now, and you can watch me go through the menu settings, and we'll get your camera set up as quickly as possible because you just want to use it, right? Let's go. So let's dive straight into the menu. I'm going to assume that you've already set up your language options and stuff. If you do want to see how to do that, then I do have an article on my website, www.cotswoldphotography.com. But for now, we'll assume that you've set up the camera and you're ready just to make some changes on the settings. So the first one is going to be the image quality, and I keep that to JPEG, and I also go in here and I set RAW plus JPEG, and I have the RAW file set to lossless compressed, which doesn't lose any quality, and it also saves a little bit of memory on the memory card, a little bit of room on your hard drives. JPEG quality I set to 5, but obviously you can choose whatever you want for that. Everything else there I'm going to keep at default. I'm going to move down to the second tab here, and I'm going to put high ISO noise reduction to low, and I'm going to put the color space to Adobe RGB rather than sRGB, as it just holds a little bit more color information. Before you start shooting, always format your card. So I always do that before every shoot. And then for file, this is where we can set up our files, and I set my file name to A7IV just because when I'm shooting with different cameras, it lets me know which camera the photos have been taken with or the video has been taken with. Obviously you don't need to do that if you're only shooting with one camera. I keep everything else the same there. I'll add in the copyright info, so I'll set the photographer and I'll set the copyright info to either myself or the company or whoever it is that has the ownership of the copyright at the time, and I put write copyright info to on. Drive mode I'm going to set to continuous shooting, and I put it on mid. The high option fires off too many shots that I don't want to go through, and the low option is not always quite quick enough. So we'll just press menu to go back out of there again. Bracketing settings, this is where you can set up bracketing if you want to. I don't have that set, and also interval shooting. And then we can change the shutter type, and we can go into silent mode. I have it on mechanical shutter with E front curtain shutter. So that's pretty much set to standard. Image stabilization is all set to standard as well. And then we go into the exposure menu, and I normally use manual ISO, but if you want to use auto ISO, you can click in here, go up to auto ISO. You can set your minimum ISO and your maximum ISO that you're prepared to use. And then you can also set the shutter speeds, but you can see I can't do that because I'm in manual exposure at the moment. But you can set the minimum auto shutter speed either to an amount that you actually want, a shutter speed that you require. So for portrait, something like I have, a 1/250th, or you can have the camera do that for you itself. Exposure compensation, again, I keep everything standard. And metering mode, I have it on multi-metering, and I keep face priority and multi-metering on, so it will meter for the face. It will give priority towards the face if any faces are in your shot. Flash I ignore. White balance I have it set to auto because I shoot RAW and JPEG. The A7IV is pretty good in giving auto white balance, and you can also set this up to choose whichever white balance you want if you're shooting, say, video. Or if you're shooting in sort of broad daylight, cloud, you know, if that suits it better. You can also set the Kelvin yourself, which I sometimes do when I'm shooting video. Don't tend to do it too much with portraits. So we'll skip down and we're going to color tone, and I'll leave the D-range optimizer on. I tend to set the creative look to portrait, and I'll leave the picture profile off. That's for video. Usually I use that for video to get the log profiles and stuff. Those will affect your JPEGs and not your RAW files. Zebra display I want off for photo. And then the autofocus settings, I'm going to go into continuous AF. I'm going to leave these set as standard because I want it balanced when I'm in autofocus continuous mode. And I bumped the tracking sensitivity up to 4, I just find that works a little bit better. AF illuminator I'm going to turn off. and then we'll go down to the focus area. Now I choose tracking because it enables me to just lock on to the target that I want, and in a minute I'll show you the other settings to put eye detect on, but that overrides the tracking as well. So if it detects a face in the scene, then it will pick up on the face rather than following what I'm tracking. So I leave it on tracking, and I have the size set to tracking spot small because that's just about the perfect size. Don't touch any of this here, skip straight through. And then here we go, we're onto the face detect and eye detect. So we've got face priority on, so that will override the tracking if you have a face in your scene. And obviously face eye detect, we're going to put it onto human, and the others are left at default. I will sometimes manually focus, so I will just nip into this menu option here, and I can turn the peaking display on and off. And I tend to set it to peaking level high, and I tend to set the color to red because I find that's the one that stands out the most. Magnification, if you want to check the focus of your shot after you've taken it, then make sure this enlarge initial position is set to the focus position, then it will zoom straight in on the area that you focused on rather than just going to the center. I skip down, I don't do any of this with the playback menu, and I go straight into the setup menu, and this is where you can do all the customizations and stuff. So presumably you've already set your language, your date, time, NTSC, PAL, but if you haven't, as I say, you can go and see the article on my website, www.cotswoldphotographer.com. So we're going to go into option 3, Operation Customize, and bearing in mind this is a setup for portraits as well, but you can obviously change these as you wish. And we're going to go into custom dial set, and the first set of custom dials I've got first set of customizations I've made is I've changed the AEL button to creative look, so that just brings up the creative looks in camera. And there you go, you can see I've just pressed it there. And then I have set the AF on button to turn on IAF on and off. Maybe there's a subject in the frame that I don't want to focus on their eye, so I can just turn that off and then I'll be able to focus where I want to. So the C1 button, 3 on this screen, I've set it up to be able to change my white balance quickly. Custom button 3, which is number 4 on this, but custom button 3 on the back of the camera. I've set that to focus mode so I can quickly change my focus mode. And the C4 button, or the delete button, which is number 5 on this, I've set up to quickly switch between APS-C crop and full frame, so I can quickly switch, get an idea of the composition if I want to get a little bit more zoom or a little bit more range out of my lenses, because I'm shooting with a lot of primes. It just enables me to crop in. I know I can do that in post, but I like to do it in camera so that I can just at least get an idea of the composition. Okay, down onto the next one. I haven't changed too much on this, but what I do like to do is I like to change the center button here to become a menu button. So now I can just press this. If I'm holding the camera one-handed, I can just quickly press the center button and bring up the menu and dive into any options that I want. And I have changed number 4, so press to the right, rather than it being ISO as it says on the camera. I've actually switched that to turn on peaking display, so if I want to quickly manual focus, I can turn the peaking on and off. And I'll show you why I've changed it from the ISO in a minute, because I've set another setting to change ISO. And I've got the down button on this scroll pad to turn it quickly into silent mode. I use that sometimes if I just want to, turn the camera noise down if I'm taking portraits on the street or something like that. I've changed the top C2 button to aspect ratio, so I can quickly shoot in a different aspect ratio. I quite like shooting in 4:3 aspect ratio, so I will use that sometimes, but also I might not shoot, I might just shoot the raw file, but it'll give me an idea of the composition. The lenses have function buttons on them, so I have actually set that up to control IAF as well. I might actually change that back to not set at all, because I already have the IAF set on the back of the camera. These are where you can change your dials around, but I pretty much have it set up as standard. I have the aperture controlled on the front dial, I have the shutter speed controlled on the rear dial, and what I've done is number 4 down here at the bottom, I've set that to control ISO, so the rear wheel there controls ISO, so you've got quick access to all 3 exposure controls pretty quickly at your fingertips. So once you've set that up how you want and you've set the shutter speeds to your sort of standard, so I normally set it at 1/250th open aperture on the lens, so I'll have it at like 1.4 on this lens, and I'll set my ISO to base ISO initially, and then I can just tailor that as I'm going through the shoot, as I'm photographing or whatever. You then can save that setting, so you quickly go down to it's in the camera menu, and it's number 4 there, and you can go into camera memory set, and then up in the top of the screen here you can see which custom mode on the PASM dial you're going to set it to. So I already have that set to custom mode 1. I'll quickly go through and show you how I would set up for just sort of standard shots. So I have already got it set in here, so I've just gone into custom mode 2 on the dial. So everything is exactly the same on this, with the exception of drive mode, which I've got it set to single shooting, and I've got everything else the same. Exposure, everything is the same. The only difference being I've changed the creative look to standard. Zebra display is still turned off, and the autofocus mode I've got it on single shot AF, and I've got the focus area to spot, so it's not going to do any tracking, and I can focus in on fine details exactly where I want to, and I've got it set to spot small. So that's the only difference between me shooting portraits and landscapes. I also change obviously the basic aperture setting, so I have it set to f8 as standard, and I have the shutter speed set lower because obviously I don't need to freeze the action. But that's it. So I hope you found that useful. If you haven't decided whether you're going to get sort of the A7III, the A7IV at the moment, then do check out the video on that. And there's more videos to come. I'll be testing out Fuji X Pro 3 against the X100V pretty soon. That video's to come probably in the next week or two. And also I'll be putting the A7IV up against the Canon R6 once it arrives. So thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful. It'd be really great if you could like and subscribe, because that really helps me out, and I'll see you in the next video.